Welcome everyone to episode 131 of Raw Sport. My name is Ahmed Al Hooli. We're back with another huge show with legendary trainer Mr. Robert Garcia. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Robert, let's get straight into it. We live in very interesting times in the world of boxing. How does Robert Garcia, a man who's been trainer of the year many times, been around for many years, former world champion, grown up in a boxing family, see the current state of boxing?
Well, look, it's just like life. We have to learn how to live with it. Every change in the world, we have to adjust. We have to, you know, learn to live the different way of life. In the sport in boxing, there's also a lot of changes. There's been a lot of times where we think it's never going to end, and something ends, and you have to start all over, and you have to look for the what benefits you better. Just like I say, just like life. You know, you have a wife. One day you get divorced. You have to learn that you have to move on and find another one. So in boxing, we never thought HBO or Showtime were going to be out of business in boxing, and they did. But every promoter had to find a different direction, uh, different TV network. Lately, it looks like a lot of TV networks are out of boxing, but the applications are coming around and doing a lot of stuff with boxing. So we just have to know how to adjust and how to uh, live the different way.
Robert, the biggest promotion in boxing for many years was Top Rank. And Top Rank led the way, and you had many fighters that fight under their banner. And we saw their deal for 6 years for $90 million with ESPN Plus and the ESPN network. Since that deal has expired, from reports on the ground is they've struggled to get a new TV or cable provider. On the other end, we've seen the zone come into the game during that period in the last 5 or 6 years. And that's become a bit of the home of boxing and martial arts in general. And many people are concerned that Top Rank, the big boys in town, uh, if they're struggling, what does it leave for others in the sport?
Look, it's something that the whole boxing world is living right now. W- we never expected a company as big as Top Rank to be in a position right now where nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows if they have a new deal. Nobody knows what the company is gonna go through in the next few months. I have fighters that are still signed with Top Rank, and I am waiting and hoping that they find somewhere to be able to. They are the best. They are the best when it comes to developing fighters. They are the best when it comes to working out those kind of deals. So I have no doubt that they will figure something out. But it is something that worries the whole boxing world because, like you just said, we've been saying they are the biggest, the most respected ones, the ones that have been around the longest. So it's something that nobody ever expected, but it's part of life. Like I said earlier, it's part of life. We have to learn to adjust, and we have to learn that things change, life changes. And like I told you, in the world, in schools, and there's a lot of changes now. There's a lot of new things going on in the world that we have to adjust and we have to learn to live with.
Robert, the zone has come into the sport. They built a presence more overseas than inside the USA. The USA is understood globally as the mecca of boxing, specifically Las Vegas. Those are the terms that everybody refers to. When you think boxing, you think the US, you think the Alis, the Fraziers, the Tysons, all US based, US boxers. A International network like the Zone has struggled to make its presence felt inside the USA. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, I think people, us fans in the US, are used, we're so used to, like a few years back, the HBO, the Showtime, the pay-per-views. We had the names, the Mike Tysons, the Oscar de la Hoyas that were doing great numbers on pay-per-view. Uh Also, Mayweather came in and did breaking record numbers. So that's what we were used to in the US. I think in other countries, especially the UK, boxing is huge in the UK, but they keep their champions and their big names in their country to where they become superstars in their country, but they're not really that big outside of their country. When it comes to the US, I think fighters that have become global stars, most of them but have come out of the United States to a point where not just HBO, not just Showtime, but the whole world wants to see. So I think that makes a big difference when it comes to what's going on right now. That there's not that big the big cable company that is willing to put up those fights, and that's why a lot has been changing. A lot has been ending to where fighters are not well known worldwide because there's no more pay per view. There's only the applications now, and a lot of people, find they'll try to find a way to see it, but not because they pay for the application, but because they try to find it somewhere else. So that makes a big difference. Pay per views were watched all over the world, and they did great numbers, and that all that has changed.
Robert, you mentioned the UK builds its own stars nationally within their country. They struggle to build outside, which is fair enough, which is very true, bar the exception of Anthony Joshua,
Correct.
all the likes. Now, if we look at what they've done in the last 10, 15 years, they've revitalized their national titles, they've revitalized their regional titles. In the US, I can't remember the last time I heard of a national title being announced or fought for or made relevant. Do you believe this is one of the reasons why boxing has fallen off the cliff in the US?
100%. Look, 20, 30 years ago, it was important for a fighter here in the United States to win a national title. It was important because that put them in the rankings, in the top 10 rankings, when the rankings meant something, when the organizations had rules. You have to win a NABF or NABO to be in the top 10. Nowadays, none of that is working. They don't do none of that. Nobody knows who the NABF champion is right now. Nobody knows who the NABO. Nobody knows all that. Nobody knows none of that. That's why people don't see that importance in boxing anymore. Uh, in the UK, I think there's titles like Commonwealth title, who is huge over there. If you become the Commonwealth champion, the whole nation cares about you. The whole nation is looking forward to your next fight. You have a Commonwealth title in a soccer stadium, and it's going to sell out because they put importance to it. In the United States, nobody cares about that anymore. In the United States and Mexico, because my dad always talks about Mexico fights 50, 60 years ago, where the national champion was a big star in the country. The national champion used to sell out arenas in Mexico. Not anymore. Nobody cares who the national champion is. Nobody cares who's ranked number one or number two in the organizations because of the way boxing, the turn that boxing did. A lot of organizations started ranking whoever they want. They don't do the mandatories. They don't do they have the interim champion, but they don't force the champion to fight the interim champion anymore. So all that has a lot to do with when other countries like the UK, like I'm telling you, we hear about it because we don't really, I don't even know what it means, but the Commonwealth is huge.
Yeah.
It's something huge over there, and people follow it. People are proud of it. A Commonwealth champion makes really good money over there. Over here in the States, a national champion, nobody cares and nobody even knows who he is.
I'll give you an example. Fabio Wardley and Justice Hooney, two heavyweights, fought at a soccer stadium. 29,000 people rocked up.
Exactly.
And what was on the line? Not much.
Exactly.
So the US doesn't have that anymore. Why?
Doesn't It
Why
doesn't
is that
anymore.
missing now from the global powerhouse of boxing?
And I wish I knew, and I wish I could fix that because my gym is full of talent. If my gym was in the UK, I would have all of my young fighters fighting for Commonwealth titles, filling up arenas because that's how big boxing is in the UK, and everybody supports the national champion, the state title. People support that. People love that. That we lost that here in the States. It's unfortunate to talk about it because it's something that nobody cares about anymore. I remember in 95, I believe I won my NABF title, North American title. And that was a big deal for me, man. That put me in the rankings. That gave me a bigger name, to get in the rankings and one day fight for the world title. Things that don't happen anymore here in the United States.
Who do you think is to blame for the diminishing of the value of these titles?
Man, I wish I knew. I think at the end is just those fighters that just cared about making so much money and not really cared about what title they had or what title they were holding. It was just about becoming famous and making all the money in the world, which I also can't blame. I have to understand that at the end of everything, it's the important thing is how well you are living with your loved ones, and not caring about any bells. You're taking care of your family, which is the most important thing. But it's hard to say whose fault it is, uh because promoters could have a lot of fault, managers, but I think at the end, the fighters themselves, because they're the ones that have to say, I want to fight my mandatory. I need to fight against that person because that's going to be the biggest fight out there for me. We don't see that anymore. Right now, we only see the fights that make the most sense and the fights that make the most money. We see Tank Davis, having an exhibition against
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul, and the world here in the States, they're excited about it. They're gonna do a lot of pay-per-view numbers. They're gonna make a lot of a lot of money because the fans that are gonna be watching have no idea what boxing is. They don't know the real boxing. It's gonna be just a lot of just regular people that know that Jake Paul is gonna fight and they want to tune in. That might be making a big difference.
Robert, it's going to bring me to my next question. How do you feel about crossover influencer boxing? Has it helped the sport or is it hurting the sport?
Well, look, it's helping a lot of fighters, especially those that fight Jake Paul. They're making a lot of money. Tank is gonna make probably the most money he's ever made with on an exhibition fight. It's not even a fight; it's an exhibition. So I'm not. I don't blame that either. I just know that we should have had the rematch with Roach, but that was not going to generate him a lot of money. So he's going after whatever's making him more money. So I don't blame him either. But I don't like it. That doesn't mean I like it. I don't. I'm not mad at him for because he's making the most money out there. But I would have loved him to give Roach a rematch. So there's nobody to blame. It's just the people are tuning in. The people are paying. Jake Paul is bringing a lot of attention to boxing. He's doing a lot of a lot of numbers on pay-per-view, and it's all people that are not even boxing fans. It's just regular people that are paying for pay-per-view to watch him fight, and it's working for him. So it's something that I have to accept. Shit, I wish I had a Jake Paul in my gym. I wish I had somebody that could challenge him and make $20 million paydays. Because that's what boxing is about. At the end, they all want to make their money.
Jake Paul brought Netflix into boxing. Before that, nobody could bring them into the sport. So he's definitely added value. We saw with the Crawford and Canelo fight, attracted 41 million people globally, which is huge for the sport. But in saying that, do you believe, or what's your opinion on those that say that Jake Paul is bringing the WWE into boxing?
Well, look, I don't want to say that because this fight with Tank is an exhibition. They announced an exhibition, so I'm okay with that being an exhibition. But when it comes to fights, he just fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who is a former world champion. So one thing everybody says about Jake Paul is, oh, he's just a YouTuber. He's a YouTuber. In reality, he is a professional fighter. He does train. He is training. He does get in shape. He did compete, challenge himself against guys that have names like Chavez Jr. So he is doing what we all do with any young fighter that's getting started. I have guys that have 10, 12, 15 fights that I'm still picking the right opponents, that I'm still trying to build up the record. Uh just like Jake Paul is doing right now. The only difference is Jake Paul is making a lot of money and selling pay-per-views. That's the only difference. But he's doing exactly what we all do with our young fighters. We all pick the right opponents. We all fight former MMA fighters because they're probably the easiest ones to compete, to fight. I have a lot of young fighters that are having 3, 4, 5 professional fights that fight against MMA fighters, and it's a league, it's a fight that goes in the record, it goes in the box rec. So Jake Paul's doing the same thing. The only difference, like I said, is he's making a lot of money and selling a lot of pay-per-views. So I give him his credit. He's doing the right thing.
Which brings me to my next question. Are today's fighters too protected early on in their careers?
It's our job as trainer and managers to protect our fighters. Sometimes there's been cases where you protect them too much to a point where you ruin their career. You got to know when you got to step it up. My case, I have fighters that start, their pro debut. I'll probably build them 5 or 6 fights, taking care of them. But then I got to give them something, a little challenge. And then once they pass the challenge, then we go to the next level, little by little. I do like to protect my fighters. I do like that system where there's managers from the past that used to protect their fighters very well and then have them ready and build them up until they were ready. Rest in peace, Cameron Duncan. I could say he's one of the best ones that used to do that. Top Rank has really great matchmakers that know exactly how to build their fighters to make them superstars. I think they've done a great job. I don't know what's going to happen with them next. If they're going to be able to do the same thing that they've done for the past 40, 50 years, but they were really good at it. They were really, really good at it. So we have to respect that too. I like taking care of my fighters. I don't like to rush them, but I have had those those uh those fighters that, because of the promoters, are pushing me to step them up in competition, where I'm forced to do it. And I've done it, and sometimes it works, but other times it also doesn't go our way.
Staying with the development of young fighters, recently we had an announcement from the new players in the sport of boxing, the TKO group, led by Dana White, and in the shadows, Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro, the big boys from TKO. They announced a contender series that will launch next year, 2026, and air on Paramount Plus and potentially on the CBS network. Ton of exposure potentially for young upcoming contenders. But Dana White's style is different to the traditional style of boxing. And we're going to see from what we've seen, if we're going off what we've seen in the UFC in the Dana White Contender Series, he's bringing in fighters from all over the country. They're fighting each other for a contract in the UFC. Does this help the development of young fighters moving forward?
I think it's gonna be a lot harder because the fighters are gonna have to challenge themselves and win to advance and to get better and to get bigger fights. But I think it's gonna be it's gonna work because right now all the young talent, all the young fighters are struggling to make it to the big promoters, to the big names. So I think it's something that's gonna take some time, but I think it's gonna work. I think with them coming in and paying a little bit better than any other promoter is gonna make a big difference because any young fighter that's getting started in their career as a professional fighter, if if they're getting more than what a promoter is normally paying, I think a lot of them are going to end up signing with them. Even world class fighters, world champions, if 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 their minimum with a promoter is a purse where TKO is willing to pay 2 or 3 times more, well then a lot of fighters are going to say, forget fighting for the WBC, forget fighting for the IBF. I don't care. I want to go get the money. I think it's gonna be a process and it's gonna take some time. But I think at the end, I think it's gonna work out.
Robert, do you believe they are going to lure fighters in that way by paying them more?
I think nowadays, look, we're watching that. You know, we're already seeing. We're talking about it earlier with Tank. Why is he doing that Jake Paul exhibition? Because he's gonna make 2 or 3 times more money than he would make giving Rhodes the rematch. We've seen it with a lot of fighters. I think Mayweather started it with when he fought. When he fought Conor McGregor. Which was a real fight, but it was a MMA fighter. That had nothing to do in a world class fight, and they fight and make hundreds of millions of dollars. So do I think money is the most important thing for a lot of fighters? It is not for all of them, because some do have pride. Some do have pride and say, I'm the WBC champion. I'm the WBO champion, and I want to stay where I'm at, and I want to continue defending my title. But if you ask me, most of the fighters, they're rather gonna go wherever the money's at.
Do you think the ability to build out stars because of their leverage and network into other um, promotions or organizations like the UFC, the WWE, the all the agencies, the talent agencies? Do you think that will also lure fighters to TKO?
Well, I think it's gonna be a process. The UFC uh in the early 90s, they were starting to put up their names out there. I remember hearing the Gracie brothers and from Brazil, stuff like that. It wasn't big then, but look, 30 plus years later, it's it's a multi-billion-dollar company. So can they put it together and do the same with boxing? I I think it's gonna be a little bit harder because there's so many top promoters that are still fighting to to keep champions with them. Organizations like the WBC, the IBF, WBA, or WBA, that are gonna be fighting to keep their fighters defending their titles. Might take a little bit more effort and more money from TKO to do it. But like I said, at the end, money's going to be the difference, because most of the fighters, they're going to go after the biggest paydays.
Robert, in the past, we saw the building of stars in boxing, especially in the US. The Pacquiaos, the Mayweathers, the Oscar De La Hoyas, the Tysons of the world, the Canelos of recent times. Are we doing enough as a sport in the US to build these stars? Because after Canelo goes, if you think about it, Canelo's got a whole nation behind him, Mexico, and a lot of the South Americans throughout America and other parts of the world. But after him, who does the torch go to?
Yeah, you know what? Right now, yeah, right now, I can't think of somebody that I could say that's going to be the guy that takes the torch from Canelo, because Canelo just became a global star, especially Mexico, here in the United States, and all of America. He's the biggest name out there in the last 20, 30 years. He's huge. His name is big, bigger than than Julio Cesar Chavez. He just became such a big name and a big star that you don't see that often. And I don't think we'll see anybody close to that anytime soon. Uh, is there a lot of talent? Is there a lot of fighters that might be more even more talented than Canelo? Oh yeah, there is. They're out there. We just seen it this weekend with Boots Ennis. I have fighters in my gym that I think are as talented or more than as talented as Canelo, like Jesse Bam Rodriguez, Virgil Ortiz, Remy Murataya, just to name three. There's a lot of talented fighters, but do I see them becoming the global stars like Canelo did? It's going to be very hard, very close to maybe impossible. But there's one, you only get one of those every 20, 30 years. We don't get that often. We were lucky to have uh Pacquiao and Mayweather kind of around the same time, where they were both superstars, but we don't get that often. I think it's just every 20, 30 years we get one of those.
Robert, is the sport and the promoters of these current fighters doing enough to build that next star? Because Canelo really made his name under Golden Boy during that Schaefer era. Are we seeing enough?
I think they do the right thing, but we're not doing it anymore. I think there's all the new promotions, Matchroom, who's huge right now, probably the biggest in the world. But I know their system, and I know they don't want to waste too much time to build up a fighter. They want the bigger fights, and they want to challenge them to see if they're ready to compete in the next level, to a point where Golden Boy took really good care of Canelo and built him to make him a global superstar. Top Rank did the same with Mayweather when he started his career and made him a big star. And Top Rank has done it many times with so many different fighters. But nowadays, I think they're looking for the faster route, and might might work with some fighters, but I think mostly everybody would want to take their time. I think it's the safer way is take your time and do it when the right time comes. But promoters are not looking for that anymore.
Robert, is that because these promoters have been burnt by previous superstars that moved on from them after the investment they've made, or why the change?
Well, it's happened a lot. That might be the case because they once a fighter becomes a big star, they do want to go on their own. They do want to do their own promotion. They do want to call the shots, which they have the right to do it too. We can go against them. And promoters doing all the work to one day losing that fighter. Maybe that is the reason. I don't know. You might be right.
Well, there you go. All right, Robert, want to thank you very, very, very much for joining me on the show. I've taken up enough of your time. One last one from me. Um, if you could fix something in the sports today, Robert, what would that be?
If I could fix something in the sport, man. See, the thing is that I'm involved in boxing, so I love, you know, I love the interim titles because I have one interim champion right now in Virgil Ortiz, who is probably the best in the division, and he hasn't won a major title yet. Uh, so I could say, oh, I wouldn't want interim titles. I wouldn't want, those type of, the regular, the super champion, the golden champion, the silver champion. But they're all important for us because I have those fighters that are making a lot of money defending their interim title. So I'm okay with it. Would I make a change? Probably not, because that would be being a little biased. I have those. I have that champion right now. Like I said, in Virgil, who I think is the best in the division, but he's still not doesn't hold that main title, which kind of sucks. But we have to live with it. So the only change that I would probably consider doing is there's a lot there's organizations that do the second day weigh-in, and that I wouldn't want because it does affect a lot of fighters. Some fighters can't even fight for that title because they have to make a second day weigh-in, and that hurts. That hurts a lot of fighters because there's some that could get into some real serious problems by holding that weight.
Robert, sorry, one last one. Our our national treasure, Tim Tszyu, is in the States, and he's currently doing some training with a few different gyms. You've seen Tim fight. You've seen his development over the years. You're considered the best trainer in the game by many, and by myself. What are your thoughts on Tim's? What does Tim need to do to take it back to where he was the top of the sport?
Well, I'm glad he's doing that because no disrespect to his team, his former trainers, but I think the first fight with Fundora was a big mistake, and not stopping it at the right moment. Where if they would have gone to the scorecards, he could have won. He was probably winning that fight, or if it was on before the fourth round, they could have stopped it and they could have gone to a draw, a no contest, and then have enough time to fight again and do it again and be 100% ready. But they made that big mistake. So I'm glad he's looking. I didn't even know he was trying to find a different team, a different camp. I had no idea he was in the States looking for that, which is it's good for him. I think he still has a lot left in him. I think he could bounce back and become a great fighter, a great world champion, and get big fights because he's a big name.
Yeah, he's cleaned out his whole team. He's brought on Michael Altamura as his manager, and they're rebuilding him basically. And now he's
Oh,
in the
that's awesome.
States.
I wish him the best, and hopefully he bounces back with the right team and the team that's going to take him to the top level again because he's got the quality, he's got the skills to be great in the sport.
Mr. Robert Garcia, I want to thank you very much for joining me on Raw Sport once again. Ladies and gentlemen, legendary trainer, Mr. Robert Garcia, thank you very much for joining me
For having
on
me.
Raw Sport. Take
Thank you
care, my
very
man.
much. Thanks for having me. Thank